Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Evolving Consciousness. In today's video, we are going to talk about the teachings of Sri Ramana Maharishi. So, if you are someone who is not interested in spiritual topics, do yourself a favor and please walk out of this video because this video won't serve you much. Friends, when we talk about spirituality, when we talk about this concept, this inner drive to understand the different domains and topics of spirituality, oftentimes people have an understanding that spirituality and the spiritual subjects are meant for the downtrodden, are meant for the people who are economically not so well-to-do, or probably they are devoid of ambitions. I want to give you a very important context, something which is inherent in symbolism in our Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan essentially means eternal. If you talk about the goddess of wealth, Lakshmi, the goddess of material prosperity is considered to be Lakshmi in Sanatan Dharma. And if you look at any picture of Mahalakshmi, she is always residing at the feet of her husband, Lord Vishnu. Mahalakshmi is basically symbolic of prosperity, whereas Mahavishnu is the epitome of spirituality. They both aren't divorced. They both are in a very powerful marriage. The reason I brought about this example, this symbolism, is because most of us don't understand the spirit behind those symbolisms and all the symbols inherent in the eternal culture. The fact is that if a person is truly spiritual, if a person is truly an epitome of what Lord Vishnu possesses, he cannot be devoid of material prosperity. Most of us are so much ritualistic. There's a very common ritual in India that we need to pray to Goddess Lakshmi on the day of Friday. Right? This is a very common rhythm or pretty common stereotype. But what we fail to understand is that if worshipping Mahalakshmi would make you wealthy, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett would be ardent devotees of Mahalakshmi. But what we are missing the key and deep points there. Now, this is not to denigrate the ritual. I am no way denigrating the stereotypes which were established by our rishis. All I am inviting you to consider is that we have forgotten the spirit behind the rituals. And when you connect the spirit with the rituals, that is the foundation of spirituality. The reason I brought about this understanding of Lakshmi is if you deconstruct this word Lakshmi, what does this mean? Lakshmi is essentially coming from Lakshya. When a person is blessed by Mahalakshmi or Lakshmi, he has an absolutely keen focus in life. He has a clarity in life. He has a vision for his life. Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, when they were having lunch, they were being asked by an interviewer, "Sir, what is the one common thing which you both have and which is key and which served very instrumental in your success?" And they just told one word. They said focus. Just look at the great connection, the deep meanings associated with our Sanatan Dharma. Lakshmi is not only about wealth, money, liquid cash. Lakshmi is way beyond. There are so many delicate encryptions which can be understood from those photos. The fact that Lakshmi is always residing at the holy feet of Lord Vishnu is basically suggesting that the person who serves the most, the person who gives the most to nature, will be blessed with wealth and material opulence. Just look at any person who has achieved huge in life and you'll realize that this person was philanthropic by nature from the very beginning. It was not that he became rich and he became philanthropic. To the irony, to the contrary, one can say, and it won't be an overstatement to say and suggest, that because he was philanthropic, he became rich. The fact is that when we look at the symbolism of material prosperity, If a person is truly spiritual, it is impossible for him to not be blessed with material opulence and prosperity. So if anybody tells you or suggests you that losers are the people who are meant for spirituality, just discard that thought process or viewpoint and put it in the dustbin, because that's absolute nonsense. Anyone who is truly successful, anyone who is truly blessed with material prosperity. Now, material prosperity is not necessarily wealth. The biggest prosperity, the biggest wealth anyone has is his knowledge. If you look at any billionaires, you will find one habit which they had in common from childhood: the habit of reading books. Because there's only one way you can acquire knowledge from different domains, and that is through books. So, one needs to carefully observe the various symbolisms which is used in our Sanatan Dharma, and always understand that without the spirit in rituals are just mechanical means to connect to God, but most of us don't connect to God at a spiritual level. We connect to God so that we can fructify our material longings, our material desires. But to the contrary, if we are serving Vishnu, the epitome of spirituality, understand this very deep point that Lord Krishna is an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. And Lord Krishna talks about Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the text which is filled with spirituality. So next time somebody gives you this paradigm, this thought process, this thought narrative, you just need to understand. You probably don't even have to retaliate, but just pity the naivety of that individual, because he's so lost in his ignorance. He doesn't even understand the deep meanings encrypted in knowledge and literature. Now let's get back to the central focus of this video, which was to do with Bhagwan Ramana Maharishi. Now people from South India would have heard his name. He's considered as the Jivan Mukta saint, right? So Jivan Mukta saint is a title which is given to a liberated saint. Many of his followers consider him as the incarnation of Lord Shiva. And his teachings, if you just Google them and try to understand, they will test your intellectual capabilities to the limit. And once you are done with reading and trying to assimilate what he's saying, one thing will be murdered in you. Yes, you heard that right. One dimension of you will be murdered. You might be wondering, what is that dimension? The dimension of mind, which is so filled with so many thoughts. The more you digest and the more you are able to understand what he's saying, the frequency of your thoughts reduces drastically. Because this is one of those saints, one of those revered saints in our culture, who is so powerful and he speaks to the point. There's no fooling around. And whatever he's saying, whatever his thoughts are on the concepts of spirituality, they touch a being so deep that you can automatically feel the effects of his literature. And Ramana Maharishi is one saint, one revered saint, who attracted a lot of international attention. And he didn't do any marketing, he didn't do any kind of publicizing that I'm a great guru. Just his aura was so magnetic that people naturally drove to him. And today's video, I'm going to talk about the central philosophy of his teachings, which is based on this premise, this concept called self-inquiry. Now, what does self-inquiry mean, right? I mean, his old understanding, his old teachings is basically mushrooming or shooting from this premise of self-inquiry. Now, to the layman, you might be thinking, what does self-inquiry mean? So, let me put it in very pragmatic terms, right? So, he says that whenever a thought arises in your mind, question it that to whom is this thought arising? The immediate answer would be to me. Then you need to start going into this deep questioning of who am I? Now, there's a beautiful quote by Ramana Maharishi which I would like to tell, which I would like to quote out in this context. And he says The question, who am I, is not really meant to get an answer. The question, who am I, is not really meant to get an answer. The question, who am I, is essentially going to destroy the person who's asking this question. Now, when he says he's going to destroy the person who's asking this question, he's basically talking about the constant jittery of the mind, the constant trying to bombard information of the mind, this tendency of the mind to seek a lot of things to satisfy his hunger pangs. Because let's understand, a human being on an average thinks 60 to 70 thoughts a day. And if there is some challenging situation in life, the thought process is on overdrive. And it is said, research has proven that the number one reason for all the diseases modern day is going through, modern people are going through, is all psychosomatic. Now, if you understand this fact that when you inquire or when you ask this question repeatedly to the mind, when you develop this faculty of questioning, you will notice that the frequency of your thoughts start reducing. And that is the beginning of self-inquiry. I know this sounds very simple, but this is a question which shouldn't be answered immediately. It's a question which needs to be realized. No amount of intellectual stimulation could cater the pangs of this question. The reason I put in a disclaimer in the beginning of this video that only people who are interested in spirituality should watch this video is because I know many of you people wouldn't even relate to what I just told. Because those people are at a very superficial level of understanding. Only a person who has some amount of intellectual faculties developed over his life can understand the weightage of this question. But this is the core philosophy of Sri Ramana Maharishi, and he says something beautiful. He says, the greatest service you can do to the world is your own self-realization. The greatest service you can do to the world is your own self-realization. There is a book by David Gogman who has sort of translated all of Ramana Maharishi's teachings, and this book is in the format of a question answer where the interviewers and journalists are asking Ramana Maharishi several questions on different topics which plague normal human, right? Topics which are day to day, and that book is basically a interpretation, basically a conversation between Ramana Maharishi and the journalist, and it talks about myriad of topics, what issues a common man faces in his day to day life, and any person who is really serious about his spiritual practices. What are the things he needs to be aware of or careful of? He always, one distinguishing factor of Ramana Maharishi is this, that he combines self-inquiry with devotion. He says self-inquiry and devotion, if combined, can be an absolutely phenomenal combination which can catalyze our road to self-realization. And he says this, that correcting yourself in terms of your own consciousness, in your own thinking, is like becoming the sun. Because let's understand, the sun doesn't correct anyone. The sun is shining brightly in the zenith. And because of his brightness, the whole world benefits. So this is a very interesting fact, because oftentimes we think that the way we can serve others is through giving, is through doing. Sure, that there's no saying that we shouldn't do that, but there are higher realms of service. There's this concept by David Hockman in this Power versus Force books. He says that the ultimate philosophy or the ultimate universe which we all live in, only 5% is visible. 95% of what is around us is not even visible. And we are all connected to energetic means. So some of you might think that someone sort of meditating somewhere up there, he's not contributing as he's not serving. But it's essentially not that. Maybe that person is contributing to the world's peace at an energetic level, which is beyond our thought process, which is beyond our perception. So this is basically the thought process of what Ramana Maharishi preaches of. There's a beautiful quote which I would like to read in this context. He says that the number one reason why every human being is chasing happiness is because happiness is a very nature. Everyone wants to be happy, whether it's an atheist, whether it's a poor person, or whether it's a rich person. Everyone is chasing happiness. And Ramana says so well, he says, happiness is our nature. It is not wrong to desire it. What is wrong is seeking it outside when it's inside. He says that the very reason for human suffering is because we are seeking happiness outside, whereas it is essentially inside. And he says something beautiful, that if you are on spiritual path, and how do you measure your spiritual progress? Right? Because unless you measure something, even in our material world, how do you measure your skill set? Like suppose you are enrolled in a programming course. Recently, I have been enrolled in the IBM certified data science certification, wherein there is a complete realm of different courses, and as I complete each of the assignments, I move to the next level. Now, how do you know that you're progressing? What are the results of that effort? Like if I'm able to solve these assignments proactively and I'm able to score high, that is basically a mark of my progress. That I'm able to digest the material and I'm able to apply it when the problems are posed in front of me. Now the number two ways through which we can measure our spiritual progress, as told by Ramana Maharishi, is the degree of freedom from unwanted thoughts. Now, what is unwanted thoughts and what is wanted thoughts might seem like a subjective question, but we all know what are those unwanted thoughts. And most of us are slaves to our mind. We cannot stop our thinking. And Ramana Maharishi says something beautiful. He says, trying to kill the mind by the mind is a foolish endeavor to engage in. Most of us are trying to do that. We try to kill the mind by the mind, and that's not possible. He says that trying to kill the mind with the mind is like saying that you want to kill yourself, right? And the mind is not someone who is going to do that. However, human beings can do that, but the mind is not going to do that. And the only way to finish the mind is to finish the constant cessation of thoughts, is to get to this root of who am I. And once you do that, with constant questioning, when you are completely observant of the kind of chaos which is happening in the mind, you will come to a point of that awareness of what is called as Satchitanand as per spiritual literature, the state of eternal bliss. Then automatically this state which sort of culminates into what is called as Samadhi is eventually brought about. And most of us, when we take up this whole idea of spirituality, we have been told to do certain things, certain rituals. But one thing you need to understand, unless we don't have the right spirit behind that ritual is only confined to be called a ritual. I hope my today's video sort of intrigued your interest towards this concept of self-inquiry. And I will highly recommend people who are interested in this domain, people who want to feel a peace of mind, bliss 24/7. Because let's understand that is the highest form of pleasure. Because we all are chasing pleasure. Ramana Maharishi says something beautiful, and he says, pleasure and pain are illusions of the mind. Happiness is our eternal nature. But the mind blocks this nature by its constant chatter. Hope my today's video brought about a fresh narrative, and hope my take on the fact of spirituality is not devoid of material progress. In fact, a person who is truly spiritual can become so materially prosperous, and material prosperity is not only about wealth, it's also about good health. Because let's remember, you cannot enjoy your wealth if you are not healthy. Because we know today that the number one pandemic, the number one thing which we are hearing in news is heart attacks in youngsters. I know people who are they are on medication, they are in their early 30s and they have heart issues. All this is happening because of a lack of spiritual character. Because we are not able to face life the way we are supposed to be facing. Either we take into shortcuts of addiction so that we can ease the pain. But this thing is only going to create further pain. I hope my today's video inspired you to think about spirituality from a different lens and also intrigued your interest in the teachings of Ramana Maharishi. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll meet you in the next video. Bye.